go. Going live. I'm live. Hello, everybody. Ooh, I'm live and have quite the hairdo today, huh? Ooh, nice hairdo. Hi, how's everybody? Deep breath in, deep breath out. In through the nose, out through the mouth. It's a yogic breath. Welcome to Frankenstein Tea. This is a short story program for adult listeners from the Island Free Library on Block Island. Hi, Dad. It is, a chance for us to check in with each other, say hi, how's everybody doing? How's everybody feeling? What's it like for you today? Are you doing okay? Chance for us to stay connected and be together. Even if it's just for a few minutes every day, we get to come together and listen to a story and be connected in that way while we continue through this time of COVID. So, I've had family visiting last week, at the end of last week and through the weekend. And so I'm just sort of coming back into a little bit into the reality of every day. And I see that the governor of Rhode Island has extended phase 3 of reopening Rhode Island for another month. It was due to expire yesterday, I believe, and now it is through October 28th. And that's because our numbers are okay. I mean, they're not horrible numbers, but they are on the rise. And as to be expected, right? People expected this as people came indoors and colleges reopened and schools reopened. So all of that just to say that we're still in this. We're in this together. And part of the Island Free Library being in this together with you, our patrons on Block Island and off Island, we continue to bring you virtual programming. So this is one of them. This is a short story program for adult listeners. And I'm drinking tea today. I like this mug. Can you see what that says? Namaste in bed. Boy, I'd love to have namasteed in bed. But it was somebody's, it's a Christmas gift passed along to the library. One of the staff got it for Christmas. I kind of like it. Because who doesn't want to stay in bed during this whole crazy COVID time? But don't, right? Get up, keep moving, keep your wits about you, keep going. Breathe deep. Have some tea, get something to drink. I'm going to read a little bit of a story today. So, grab something to drink. I really want to drink that. That's delicious, but it's hot. So let me get started with the story, and then maybe it'll still be warm when I'm done. Okay, so today I'm going to read something from Half Wild by Robin MacArthur. Half Wild Stories. I've read to you before. I think that she's like a fairly young woman. And she writes about Maine. I feel like these were about Maine, although just looking right here real quick, she lives in Vermont. She lives in southern Vermont in Marlborough. But I felt like these were about Maine. Oh no. Wildness and beauty of rural Vermont. Not sure about that. I don't know why I think Maine, but I do. But here it says Vermont, so we'll see. I read to you something. I read probably, it was the young girl, and she was with her mom, and they ended up skinny dipping. She lives in a trailer throughout these stories. I don't know if you remember that. Those were the ones I've read before. Today, by Robin MacArthur, from her collection of stories entitled Half Wild, published in 2016 by HarperCollins. I am reading Lovebirds. I'm going to sip one more sip of tea. Can I get it in? Okay, here we go. Lovebirds. The morning of the day Tub died, we went out driving around looking at houses. We took the back roads we grew up on: Butterfield, Stark, Stickney Brook, Cowpath 40. You could say it was a hobby of ours, this driving, looking. Every time we drove one of those old familiar roads, something was different. A new house popped up, or an addition, or an old house sold, or an old house torn down. We'd been doing it for some 47 years together. Could sell our brains to some historical society when we die, Tub, I said. Tub chuckled. Worth $1 or $2, he said. Maybe. Dying both was and was not a joke between us. It seemed to come up at least once or twice a day without us even meaning to. Not like I'm gonna go jump off a bridge, one of us would say. Or, well, when I die, don't go complaining I didn't treat you nice. Or, well, kill me, why don't you? It was a joke because Tub and I were always jokers. It wasn't a joke because of Tub's heart and because it seemed that what neither of us was saying out loud was spurting out every other goddamn place, like in a broken fuel line. I guess those holes are where the truth gets out. And that day was just like any other. It was mid-November. The air blue as a robin's egg. We didn't work on Sundays, so we got into our 30-year-old green diesel Rabbit and drove around. We brought a thermos of coffee, ham sandwiches, and a couple of beers, which we propped between our legs. It was cold out. Cold enough to freeze them titties, Tub said that morning as we walked out the door. Ha, I said, what's left of them? That's Tub and I, meant for each other. We went east on Stickney, then turned left onto Lake, then crossed the green metal bridge that goes up onto the ridge above Silver Creek. We passed the old Adams farmhouse that got bought in the 70s sometime by some hippies and turned into a commune. Little house on the prairie here, Tub said, and I took a swig of my beer and pinched his thigh. We passed Bud Williams' trailer and garage where he fixes school buses. His girlfriend Shelley was out in the yard putting leaves on her flower beds, her bare legs under her dress fat as watermelons. Tub honked and waved, and Shelley looked up and waved back. First time I see that girl work outside in her life, Tub said. Girl, I said, she's probably 50. Not as pretty as my girl, Tub said, and leaned over and pinched my wrinkly 70-some-year-old all-bone thigh. We took the car down Auger Hole Road and turned left under Butterfield. Tub finished his beer, and I reached into the back seat and handed him another. Only a few leaves still clung to the trees, and it hurt me a little in the chest to see them hanging on and shaking like that, all brown and ropey. We passed a hippie house tucked up against the bank of the river, shingles and glass everywhere, a stained glass window, and a falling-in porch. We used to bet on how long each of them hippies would last. Most of them didn't, or they moved out of their little shacks and built themselves houses their daddies paid for and got themselves jobs, or they turned the shacks into big glass houses. The men Tub would chuckle at. Goddamn hippies, he would say, but he loved the young pretty women with the long hair. He told me it was for business that he was so friendly, but I know Tub well enough to know he was charmed like any other good man by a pretty woman's smile. He was charmed by me too. 16 in a truck, pretty then as any of these young back-to-the-land women are, but I knew how to rope a horse and build a shed and strip the bark off a tree. Now I've been good and weathered by sun and wind, and I know I'm missing one front tooth, but it's okay. Tub loves me just the same. That I know. At the top of Farm Hill Road, past the Maisie's and some goat farming lady's place, Tub surprised me by pulling the car over on the side of the road. I knew his old family cemetery was around there somewhere, but I couldn't remember quite where. Tub got out and took a leak in a ditch. I got out too and stretched my arms up above my head, and then he headed into the woods where there's a break between the stone walls, and I followed. Say hello to the corpses, Tub said. I just nodded. Like I said, it's what we don't say where the truth slips out. It's not far through the woods, a half mile at the most. Just when you start to think you're lost, you can make out the stone wall that surrounds the graves. 1790, the dates on the first stone say. Quite a few have the last name Stark, like my Tub. Their stones are falling over this way and that in the leaves. Some people's teeth, I know. Looks like our teeth, Tub, I called out from where I stood, looking down at them this way and that. Tub grinned, showing me his. He rubbed his thick fingers over the names and started shouting some of them out loud. Constance, Ezekiel, Zipporah, Desire. The lucky ones died at birth or of old age. The unlucky died midway. There's lots of ways we could have died if we stopped to think of it. One widowmaker limb, one dumb cut, the horse's sled overturning in a rut. I thought for a moment of Tub's heart, and then I put the thought away like a cold cache locked up good. Tub sat on a stone with his hands on his knees. He pulled his half-empty beer out of his pocket and took a slug, then looked up at the sky. He was still handsome as the devil, pink cheeks and hands like a bear. I pulled out our ham sandwiches and sat down on the wall next to Tub, and we ate. The wind bit at my ears, and I pulled my coat up around them. Tub, he moved closer, put his arm around my waist. I could hear the sound of his chewing in my ears. He was so close. He smelled dank like old skin and sweet like apples. My man with the way with women and horses. When Tub was around the horses, he would get quiet, his breath deeper, move slow and steady and calm as a leaf in pond water. He knew just what would make those horses spook, and he was always looking ahead for it, seeing it before they would, pulling on their reins ever so slightly, touching their flanks so they would know, even in that moment, who was in charge. When he spoke to them, his voice was low and strong, and he didn't waste words. Just said what they needed to hear, and then they'd do it. It was a beautiful thing to see, even for me. Women and animals, I've said to him forever. You know how to work them both. And Tub, he'd just show me his handsome set of yellow teeth and flash his devil's grin. But that day, he was feeling something different. I could see it in the way he was moving his fingers, rubbing them back and forth on his jeans. The doctor said his heart was bad because of diet, that Tub should stop eating red meat and drinking beer. But I said he had a weak heart because he has always had a weak heart, for women and for animals and for woods, and most especially for me. But that doesn't mean that heart didn't keep me up at night. His breathing was heavier than it used to be, his face veering on a shade of plum. It started one day last September while Tub was delivering wood to a woman on Butler Road, a big ranch house with a pool and an attached garage. Tub dumped the wood where he had always dumped it, and then this Barbara Stokes comes running out of the house screaming and yelling something about a rhododendron, and Tub thought, somebody's tendon? Like someone must be hurt there in the house, and so he ran toward the door, all worried, until he realized this woman was upset at him, and she was squawking like a chicken, he said, and flapping her groomed arms all around. And finally, she calmed down enough for him to figure out that he had dumped the 2 cords of wood right on this lady's newly planted bed of rhododendrons. That's when you know there's a part of them that doesn't really respect you. That night after dinner, Tub's heart began to hurt. After that, it hurt him every day, though he wouldn't make a fuss over it. Like that morning amongst those stones. Look at them crows, Tub said, and he pointed to the edge of the clearing where two big ones sat in the top branches of a hemlock tree. Lovebirds, I said, pinching Tub's thigh. Crows are birds that mate for life. Damn rocket hounds. Damn ugly lovebirds, I said and giggled. And Tub, he turned toward me and said, least they ain't missing their teeth. And we both giggled some more. After that day at Barbara Stokes's, he hadn't thought too much about his heart at first. Just went out with the flashlight to the lean-to and fed the horses like he always did and gave them fresh water. And when he came back in, he was breathing heavy and kind of holding his chest. And I said, Tub, honey, you don't look too goddamn well. And he said it was nothing to worry about, so we just climbed into bed early like that, him all quiet and me lying next to him, wide awake as a buzzard. The next day it wasn't better, so I said, Tub, you and me going to Doc What's-a-Who's-It. Tub said okay, which I knew was bad. We walked down the trail and got into our VW Rabbit and drove to the doctor, who said sure enough, Tub's arteries were mostly blocked and that he was lucky he come in when he did and that Tub should have bypass surgery. And when Tub said, no goddamn way in hell, the doc said, well, then you're going to have to change some things about the way you do your living. No red meat, no drink, no hard work for a few months. Slow and easy walks are good. Clearly, Doc didn't know my Tub like I do. And the doctor said, there's a good chance you'll die. So there we were, sitting looking at dead people's stones in the middle of the day, facing winter low on cash and grain and something else too. Spunk, maybe. All that summer, despite Tub's efforts to help, I had to get the firewood out and split and into the truck by myself, which meant we only sold half as much. Tub could drive the truck still and do the delivering, but he couldn't be tying the chains around the logs, and he couldn't be working Shoehorn and Jake, and he couldn't even lift the logs onto the splitter. It's okay. I know how to work the muscles in my short arms and legs, but it wasn't good for Tub to see me doing all that work and him just sitting by, holding his chest and breathing hard. It's okay, Tub, I had said to him a few days earlier. You're still the best man in 50 square miles. But that didn't seem to heat him up much. He just grunted and said, sorry, Vi, looking like he'd swallowed some rusty piece of metal. Ready to hit the road? He said. The wind had picked up even more, so I nodded and lifted myself up from the stone wall with a little grunt. So long, old folks, I said toward the loose gray stones. Tub's dead people didn't say anything back to us, but the crows in the trees made a racket. Tub kicked some leaves in the direction of the stones. Don't go running off on us now, he said to his dead folks. Then he spit into the leaves by his feet and took my hand, and we walked back to the car like that. We climbed in and started her up. I opened the thermos of coffee and poured some into the styrofoam cups we kept on the floor. We sat there for a while at the side of the road with the motor running and sipped the black coffee. It warmed my tongue and the back of my throat and my belly. No cars passed, just Tub and me, sitting there like that, drinking coffee and admiring the view. We emptied the thermos and Tub started driving home. He took some of the skinny back roads we like going on. Turnpike, Old Farm, Fox. There are roads we'd known our whole lives. Roads we'd seen change like our own faces. You could map our whole lives on these little 2-bit dirt roads and not have to go farther than 40 square miles. I don't say that like I think I'm missing something. At the corner of Turnpike and Fox, the trees open up into a field and there's a view past Round Mountain all the way to Monadnock in New Hampshire. Tub pulled the car over there, and we climbed out and stood with our backs against it and looked out at the hills. We've logged half of the woods we can see. Lenny Whitman owned this field, then Oddie Hollows, then a fellow from down south for just a few years, and now some silver-haired college professor who lives alone, quiet like the rest of us. Little family tree maps of who owned what back as far as I know for every piece of ground I see. There were no houses in view from where we stood, and I was happy for that. But at the far corner, you could see where Rich Miller had sold large chunks of Whiskey Mountain, my cousin Sugar's unowned haunt, for subdivisions 15 years ago. God damn, Tubb said. Horse ass, I said. We should go down there with dynamite. Take the horses in there and have them shit all over the new floors, I said, giggling. Tubb snorted and looked at me, and for a moment the fear disappeared from his round face, and he came over and picked me up like he sometimes does. I'm barely 5 feet tall, just over 100 pounds, and swung me in his arms like I was a little girl and said, Vi, you're the best, honey. And then he kissed me straight on my mouth. So that's the kind of guy Tubb is, or was. Heart as warm as an in-ground tuber. We drove home the rest of the way in silence. Round Mountain Road, North Branch, old school. When we got to our track, we left the Rabbit parked at the road and climbed up to our place on foot. Our house is way back in the woods in a place you can only get to with a truck in summer and a ski-mobile in winter. It's more like a collection of rooms tied together than a house, each covered in tar paper and whatever kind of siding came our way at the time. Tin, plywood, pine. We don't have electricity and we don't have running water inside, just a hand pump well that sits out in the yard a ways. I guess that's why we never had kids, Tubb and I, because we knew they never could have stood it or liked it like Tubb and I do. Now there's only a moment or two here or there when I wonder, when I think about Tubb being gone and what on earth is going to happen next. When I wonder what I might have done with a little squalling fish of a baby, milk squirting out of my 2-bit breasts. But I don't wonder about it much. The light was already half gone when we got to our place. Goddamn chilly fall, Tubb said, and when we got inside, I lit a fire. Tubb went outside to feed the horses, and I sat in front of the open door of the stove and felt the blood rush back into my fingers. The plastic that covers a broken pane flapped a little against its duct tape. That hole reminded me of other holes, and I tried not to think of the doctor's bills and the cracked valve somewhere in our Dodge, or the 2 broken panes of glass in our kitchen windows. 47 years ago, I stood in Tubb's mother's kitchen in a cotton dress with Tubb's hand in mine while Minister Oley said something about the good times and the bad, and I thought about that then, the good and the bad. I heard Tubb coming in from the barn and put some canned beans with ham on the stove and added water. I helped him get his boots off at the door and poured us each half a glass of whiskey. Every man needs a little pleasure, I said. We ate our soup and pulled out the deck of cards. We sat by the window listening to the wind howling through the trees and watching the snow just beginning to come down big and flat as coins. When the whiskey started to make its way into Tubb's blood, he grinned at me again with his charming 10-tooth smile, and that sparkle came back into his blue eyes and his live heart, and then he was the boy I knew again, and he was the man that some nights, under the covers, still rolled over toward me and touched my body in the old way that is as familiar as pine pitch or hot water, the man who I still love and who I knew those 47 years ago I would love forever. Purty as a shooting star, he said to me across the table. I just grinned and showed him my pair of 10s. Pair of jacks, Tubbs said and put his hand down on the table with a thwack. God damn, I said. It was dark then, so I got up and lit the kerosene lantern and brought it over to the table so we could see our cards better. My Tub, he was always winning. He looked at me, his face hot and flush. Our house was warm from the stove and our blood from the whiskey. Outside, we could just barely make out the spots of snow coming down into the ground below. Goddamn snow, Tubbs said, looking out the window, and I thought about how when we died, no doubt someone would tear down our collection of rooms and build a nice big house, like all the other ones going up around these hills. But I didn't care. If you learn one thing working with trees and woods and animals your whole life, it's that something's got to die in order for something new to grow. I thought of a couple of old stumps out in the woods, rotting and turning to dirt and making fertile ground. Goddamn winter, I said. We grinned at each other. And then Tubbs' grin turned into something different, some kind of grimace, and a look of terror flew across his eyes. And I thought again of those lovebirds up in the hemlock trees above his dead folks' stones. And I thought of them taking off, black against the blue-gray sky. And then Tub reached out toward me, grasping for my hand, and I gave it to him. And that's when I realized Tub was dying. It was the quickest death I'd ever seen, quicker than any of the animals I'd seen die, and I'd seen plenty. I dragged him over to the rug on the floor. Not easy, you know. Tub was big, and I'm small. And I curled up next to him as he heaved his last breaths. And then, as his blood cooled, and I spent the night like that, with my Tub, there in our house, holding on tight, watching it snow. And now it's just me, and the horses, and the winter, and we're getting by. And everything I thought that night about stumps and forever is true. Did you write that part down? Here come the construction crew. I'm going to sign off.